You scroll through social media and you see them. Those people with everything you want. The job, the body, the relationship, the freedom. And for just a moment, that burn starts in your chest. You know what I'm talking about. That toxic mix of admiration and hatred. That voice that whispers, "Why them and not me?" Stop right there. Before you close this video and pretend you don't know exactly what I mean, let me tell you something nobody admits. Envy isn't your weakness. It's your compass. It's pointing you toward everything you're supposed to become, but society has taught you to be ashamed of it instead. Here's the question that will change everything. What if the very emotion you've been told to suppress is actually the key to unlocking your power? You see, there's a massive contradiction in what society preaches versus what actually works. They tell you envy is destructive. They say comparison is the thief of joy. They preach gratitude and contentment. But look around you. The people at the top, they're not content. They're not just grateful. They're hungry. They're watching. They're learning from everyone who has what they want. They've turned their envy into fuel instead of poison. They've discovered what Machiavelli knew 5 centuries ago. Envy, when properly channeled, becomes the engine of greatness. This is about understanding a darker truth that the powerful don't want you to discover. Your envy reveals your deepest desires. It shows you exactly where you want to be. It's your subconscious mind pointing at your unrealized potential. But here's the dangerous part. If you don't learn to control this force, it will control you. It will eat you alive from the inside. It will make you weak, reactive, and bitter. You must watch this video until the end, because I'm going to show you how to transform your greatest weakness into your most powerful weapon. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Think about the last time you felt truly envious. Not just a little jealous, but that deep, consuming envy that made you question everything about your life. Maybe it was scrolling through social media and seeing someone's success story. Maybe it was at a reunion, watching old friends who seemed to have it all figured out. In that moment, what did you feel? Shame, right? Like you were a terrible person for wanting what they had. But here's what Machiavelli understood that modern society has forgotten. Envy is information. It's your internal compass pointing toward what you truly value. When you envy someone's wealth, you're not just being greedy. You're recognizing the freedom and security that money provides. When you envy someone's relationship, you're not just being bitter, you're acknowledging your deep need for connection and love. When you envy someone's success, you're not just being competitive, you're seeing a version of yourself that could exist. The problem isn't the envy itself. The problem is what you do with it. Most people let envy consume them. They become reactive. They waste energy hating others instead of improving themselves. They focus on tearing down instead of building up. This is exactly where the powerful want you to stay, because when you're consumed by bitter envy, you're not a threat. You're just another person stuck in resentment while they continue to rise. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." What does this mean? It means that people are influenced more by what they see than what they experience. Your envy is often triggered by the appearance of success, not the reality of it. That person you envy, you see their highlight reel, not their behind-the-scenes struggle. You see their results, not their sacrifices. You see their current position, not the years of work it took to get there. This is your first weapon, perspective. Instead of being destroyed by what you see, use it as intelligence gathering. When you feel envy, ask yourself, what exactly am I envious of? Is it their money, their lifestyle, their relationships, their freedom? Be specific. Then ask, what would I need to do to have something similar? This transforms destructive emotion into constructive analysis. But there's something deeper happening here, something that reveals the true nature of human psychology. Envy doesn't just show you what you want, it shows you what you believe you deserve. And this is where things get dangerous. Because if you believe you deserve something but don't have it, your mind starts creating stories to explain the gap. Maybe you tell yourself the system is rigged. Maybe you convince yourself that successful people are just lucky or corrupt. Maybe you decide that wanting more makes you a bad person. These stories become prisons. They keep you small. They keep you safe in your mediocrity. They protect you from the terrifying possibility that you might actually be capable of more than you've achieved. Machiavelli understood this psychological trap. He knew that most people would rather blame external circumstances than face the uncomfortable truth. They have more power than they're willing to use. Here's a brutal reality check. The person you envy probably started with less than you have right now. They probably faced more obstacles, more rejection, more failure. The difference isn't luck or connections or talent. The difference is that they used their dissatisfaction as fuel instead of poison. They looked at what others had and said, "If they can do it, so can I." They turned their envy into energy. This brings us to Machiavelli's second lesson: imitation before innovation. Before you try to create something completely new, master what already works. The people you envy have already solved problems you're still struggling with. Instead of resenting them, study them. What patterns do you notice in their behavior? What choices did they make that you haven't? What risks did they take that you're avoiding? This isn't about copying someone else's life. This is about understanding the principles behind their success. If you envy someone's business success, study their work habits, their decision-making process, their relationship-building skills. If you envy someone's physique, examine their diet, their training routine, their mindset around health. If you envy someone's confidence, observe how they speak, how they carry themselves, how they handle rejection. Your envy becomes a roadmap. It shows you exactly where you want to go and gives you living examples of people who've already made the journey. But here's the catch. You have to be willing to pay the price they paid. You have to be willing to make the sacrifices they made. You have to be willing to face the fears they faced. Most people aren't willing to do this. They want the results without the process. They want the destination without the journey. They want to feel better about their envy without actually addressing what's causing it. This is why envy destroys them instead of empowering them. They're looking for emotional relief instead of practical solutions. Think about this for a moment. How many hours have you spent feeling envious? How much mental energy have you wasted on resentment? How many opportunities have you missed because you were focused on what others had instead of what you could build? This is the hidden cost of uncontrolled envy. It doesn't just make you feel bad, it makes you ineffective. But there's an even darker truth that Machiavelli understood about human nature. Envy isn't random, it's strategic. Your subconscious mind doesn't envy everyone equally. It targets specific people for specific reasons. Usually these are people who are similar enough to you that their success feels achievable, but different enough that it highlights your own limitations. You don't envy billionaires the same way you envy your college roommate who's now making 6 figures. You don't envy movie stars the same way you envy your neighbor with the nice car. Your envy is most intense when it feels personal, when it challenges your story about why you are where you are. This is actually valuable information. It shows you the level you're truly capable of reaching. Here's where it gets psychological. Your envy often reveals your hidden beliefs about yourself. If you envy someone's confidence, part of you believes you could be confident too. If you envy someone's success, part of you believes you have the potential for similar achievement. If you envy someone's relationship, part of you believes you're worthy of love and connection. Your envy wouldn't exist if you didn't, on some level, believe these things were possible for you. This is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it means your deepest desires are actually achievable. Terrifying because it means you can't blame circumstances for your current situation. It means you have more responsibility than you might want to accept. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." This applies to both the people you envy and to yourself. The person you envy appears to have it easy, but you don't experience their internal struggles, and you appear to be limited by your circumstances, but others don't experience your hidden potential. This is where the transformation happens. Instead of using envy as evidence of what you lack, use it as evidence of what you could become. Instead of focusing on the gap between where you are and where they are, focus on the gap between where you are and where you could be. Instead of being paralyzed by the distance, be energized by the possibility. But transformation requires more than just changing your perspective. It requires changing your actions. And this is where most people fail. They get inspired, they feel motivated, they make plans, but they don't follow through. They treat envy like an emotion to be managed instead of energy to be channeled. They want to feel better about being envious instead of using that energy to close the gap. Here's a practical framework that Machiavelli would approve of. When you feel envy, follow these steps. First, acknowledge it without judgment. Don't pretend you're not envious. Don't feel guilty about it. Just recognize it as information. Second, analyze what specifically triggers the envy. What exactly do they have that you want? Third, research how they got it. What path did they take? What skills did they develop? What prices did they pay? Fourth, create your own version of that path. You don't need to copy them exactly, but you can adapt their strategies to your situation. Fifth, take one concrete action immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. This process transforms passive emotion into active strategy. It turns destructive feelings into constructive plans. It changes you from someone who suffers from envy into someone who benefits from it, but there's still a deeper level to explore. Type, "I am ready for change" in the comments if you're following along. Machiavelli understood something about power that most people miss. The appearance of power is often more important than power itself. This applies directly to how envy works. You're often envying an appearance, not a reality. You're envying someone's Instagram life, not their actual life. You're envying their highlight moments, not their daily struggles. You're envying their public success, not their private battles. This doesn't mean their success isn't real. It means your understanding of their success is incomplete. And that incomplete understanding is making your envy both more painful and less useful. When you realize that the person you envy has problems you don't see, fears you don't know about, and struggles you don't understand, it changes everything. It makes their success more relatable and more achievable. It shows you that success doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. But here's where it gets really interesting. Machiavelli also understood that envy works both ways. While you're envying others, others are envying you. While you're focused on what you lack, someone else is looking at what you have and wanting it. This perspective shift is crucial because it shows you that you're not as powerless as you think. You have things that others want. You have achieved things that others are still working toward. You have qualities that others admire. This realization serves two purposes. First, it helps you appreciate what you've already accomplished instead of taking it for granted. Second, it shows you that you're already playing the game successfully in some areas. If others can envy your achievements, you can achieve things that make you the target of envy instead of the one feeling it. This brings us to a darker but necessary truth. Some envy is justified. Sometimes you really are capable of more than you've achieved. Sometimes you really are settling for less than you deserve. Sometimes your comfortable mediocrity really is holding you back from something greater. The question isn't whether you should feel envious. The question is what you're going to do about it. Machiavelli would tell you that comfortable people don't change. People who are satisfied with their current situation don't push for more. Envy, in this sense, is a gift. It's dissatisfaction pointing you toward growth. It's discomfort pushing you toward action. It's your internal alarm system telling you that you're capable of more than you're currently achieving. But this gift comes with a warning. Envy can motivate you or it can consume you. It can push you forward or pull you down. It can make you stronger or make you bitter. The difference is in how you channel it. Do you use it as fuel for your own growth? Or do you use it as justification for tearing others down? Do you let it inspire you to work harder, or do you let it convince you to give up? The people who succeed don't feel less envy than everyone else. They just handle it differently. They don't suppress it or feel guilty about it. They don't let it make them bitter or reactive. They use it as information about what they want and energy to go after it. They understand that envy is not the problem. Inaction is the problem. Here's something that will change how you see everything. Your biggest competitors aren't envying you. They're too busy building to waste time on resentment. They're too focused on their own growth to be consumed by what others have. They've learned to channel their envy into effort instead of emotion. This is why they keep winning while others keep complaining. The people who succeed don't feel less envy than everyone else. They just handle it differently. They don't suppress it or feel guilty about it. They don't let it make them bitter or reactive. They use it as information about what they want and energy to go after it. They understand that envy is not the problem. Inaction is the problem. Here's something that will change how you see everything. Your biggest competitors aren't envying you. They're too busy building to waste time on resentment. They're too focused on their own growth to be consumed by what others have. They've learned to channel their envy into effort instead of emotion. This is why they keep winning while others keep complaining. This doesn't mean they don't feel envy. It means they've learned to use it strategically. When they see someone with something they want, they study that person, they learn from that person, they find ways to connect with that person. They turn potential resentment into actual opportunity. They understand that the person they envy today could be their mentor, partner, or connection tomorrow. This is perhaps the most Machiavellian insight of all. Your so-called enemies can become your greatest assets if you're strategic about it. The person you envy has something you want, which means they have something valuable. Instead of resenting them for having it, find ways to learn from them. Instead of avoiding them because they make you feel inadequate, seek them out because they can teach you something. Instead of seeing them as competition, see them as a case study in what's possible. But this requires a level of emotional maturity that most people never develop. It requires you to separate your ego from your goals. It requires you to value progress more than pride. It requires you to admit that someone else might know something you don't, have skills you lack, or have made choices you haven't been brave enough to make. If this resonates with you, type, "I choose growth over ego." This brings us to the deepest level of Machiavelli's teaching about envy. It reveals not just what you want, but who you could become. Your envy is showing you a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet, but could exist if you were willing to do what it takes. It's showing you your unrealized potential. It's showing you the gap between your current self and your possible self. Most people are terrified by this gap. They see how far they have to go and they give up before they start. They focus on the distance instead of the direction. They get overwhelmed by the magnitude of change required instead of getting excited by the possibility of transformation. But Machiavelli would tell you that this gap is not your enemy. It's your opportunity. The gap shows you exactly where to focus your energy. The gap shows you what skills to develop, what habits to build, what fears to face. The gap is not a source of shame, it's a source of clarity. Instead of being discouraged by how far you have to go, be grateful for how clear the path has become. Here's what happens when you start thinking this way. Envy stops being painful and starts being useful. Instead of making you feel bad about yourself, it makes you excited about your potential. Instead of making you resentful toward others, it makes you grateful for the examples they provide. Instead of making you feel stuck, it makes you feel motivated to move forward. But transformation at this level requires you to face some uncomfortable truths about yourself. You have to admit that you've been settling for less than you're capable of. You have to acknowledge that some of your limitations are self-imposed. You have to accept that change is possible, but it won't be easy or comfortable. Most people would rather stay comfortable in their mediocrity than face the uncertainty of growth. They'd rather complain about their situation than take responsibility for changing it. They'd rather blame external circumstances than develop internal strength. They'd rather feel like victims than accept their power to choose differently. This is exactly where Machiavelli would separate the princes from the peasants. The princes understand that power comes from taking responsibility. The peasants believe that power comes from having the right circumstances. The princes use envy as fuel for growth. The peasants use envy as justification for resentment. Which one are you? The answer isn't determined by your current situation or your past experiences. It's determined by how you respond to the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Do you use that gap as evidence of your limitations, or do you use it as a roadmap for your growth? Think about the people in your life who seem to have figured it out, the ones who are living the kind of life you want to live. Do you think they started with some special advantage that you don't have? Or do you think they just made different choices along the way? Do you think they were born with some special talent, or do you think they developed skills through practice and persistence? The truth is probably uncomfortable. Most successful people started with less than you have right now. They faced more obstacles, more rejection, more failure. The difference is that they used their dissatisfaction as motivation instead of using it as an excuse. They channeled their envy into energy instead of letting it drain their energy. This is the ultimate Machiavellian insight about envy. It's not about what others have. It's about what you're willing to do to get what you want. It's not about their advantages. It's about your actions. It's not about their circumstances. It's about your choices. Envy becomes your weapon when you stop focusing on them and start focusing on yourself. But focusing on yourself doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means taking ownership of your growth while learning from others. It means being inspired by their success instead of threatened by it. It means using their achievements as proof of what's possible instead of evidence of what you lack. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think focusing on themselves means competing against others. But the highest level of success comes from competing against your previous self. The person you should be trying to beat is the person you were yesterday, last month, last year. The standard you should be trying to reach is your own potential, not someone else's achievement. When you shift from external competition to internal competition, everything changes. Envy transforms from a destructive emotion into useful feedback. Other people's success becomes inspiring instead of threatening. Your energy goes toward building instead of comparing. Your focus goes toward growth instead of resentment. This shift requires what Machiavelli called virtù, a concept that combines skill, courage, and adaptability. It's the ability to respond to circumstances strategically instead of emotionally. It's the strength to face uncomfortable truths and the wisdom to act on them effectively. It's the capacity to learn from anyone, even people you don't like or agree with. Virtù is what transforms envy from weakness into strength. Instead of being controlled by your emotions, you control them. Instead of being reactive, you become strategic. Instead of being a victim of your circumstances, you become the architect of your future. If you're ready to take control, type "I am the architect" in the comment below. But becoming the architect of your future requires you to design a blueprint. And this is where envy becomes incredibly valuable. It shows you exactly what you want to build. It gives you specific examples of what success looks like in different areas. It provides you with living proof that your goals are achievable. Your job is to study these examples and create your own version of success. This process starts with what Machiavelli called prudence, the ability to see things as they really are instead of as you wish they were. When you look at someone you envy, see them clearly. Understand their real path to success, not just the highlight reel. Recognize their actual sacrifices, not just their apparent advantages. Acknowledge their genuine skills, not just their lucky breaks. This realistic assessment serves two purposes. First, it makes their success less mysterious and more achievable. When you understand how they actually did it, you can adapt their methods to your situation. Second, it makes your envy less personal and more practical. Instead of feeling resentful about their advantages, you feel motivated to develop similar capabilities. The next step is what Machiavelli called adaptation, the ability to adjust your approach based on changing circumstances. You can't just copy someone else's path exactly because your situation is different. You have different strengths, different limitations, different opportunities. Your job is to adapt their principles to your reality. This adaptation requires both humility and creativity. Humility to admit that their approach might be better than your current approach. Creativity to modify their methods in ways that work for your specific circumstances. The combination of these two qualities allows you to learn from anyone while still maintaining your unique identity and approach. Here's what this looks like in practice. If you envy someone's financial success, don't just focus on their income. Study their relationship with money. Look at their spending habits, their investment strategies, their risk tolerance. Understand how they think about money, not just how they make money. Then adapt these mental models to your own financial situation. If you envy someone's confidence, don't just focus on their external behavior. Study their internal preparation. Look at how they handle failure, how they reframe setbacks, how they maintain self-belief despite challenges. Understand how they think about themselves, not just how they present themselves. Then adapt these mental frameworks to your own confidence-building process. If you envy someone's relationships, don't just focus on their social skills. Study their approach to connection. Look at how they create value for others, how they maintain boundaries, how they handle conflict. Understand how they think about relationships, not just how they behave in relationships. Then adapt these principles to your own relationship-building efforts. This level of analysis transforms envy from a surface-level emotion into deep-level learning. It changes your focus from what they have to how they got it. It shifts your attention from their results to their processes. It moves your energy from resentment to implementation. But implementation requires what Machiavelli called courage, the willingness to take action despite uncertainty and risk. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Understanding without implementation is just mental masturbation. You can study successful people all day long, but nothing changes until you start applying what you learn. This is where most people fail. They get inspired, they make plans, they have good intentions, but they don't follow through. They let fear, comfort, or perfectionism prevent them from taking action. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, or the perfect circumstances. But Machiavelli knew that perfect conditions never exist. Success comes from taking imperfect action consistently over time. Your envy shows you what you want. Your analysis shows you how to get it. But your courage determines whether you actually do what it takes. This courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite fear. It's not the absence of doubt, it's progress despite uncertainty. Think about this. The person you envy was once where you are now. They felt uncertain, inexperienced, unqualified. They faced rejection, failure, setbacks. The difference is that they kept going anyway. They used their envy as fuel instead of poison. They turned their dissatisfaction into determination. They transformed their weakness into strength. You have the same choice. You can let your envy consume you, or you can let it fuel you. You can focus on what you lack, or you can focus on what you could build. You can stay stuck in resentment, or you can move forward with purpose. The decision is entirely yours, but the consequences of that decision will shape the rest of your life. Here's the quiet, devastating realization that Machiavelli wants you to face. Every day you spend envying others instead of improving yourself is a day you could have used to close the gap. Every hour you waste on resentment is an hour you could have invested in growth. The ultimate cost of uncontrolled envy isn't just emotional pain, it's lost potential. It's the life you could have lived but didn't because you were too focused on what others had. It's the person you could have become but didn't because you were too busy comparing instead of building. It's the impact you could have made but didn't because you were too consumed with envy to contribute value. This realization should shake you. It should make you uncomfortable with your current patterns. It should force you to question whether you're using your energy effectively or wasting it on emotions that don't serve you. It should push you to make different choices starting right now. As Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." Your envy can make you either a trapped lion or a strategic fox. It can make you powerful or powerless. It can make you a victim or a victor. The choice is yours, but you must make it consciously and deliberately. If this has shaken something loose in your thinking, if it's forced you to see your envy in a completely different light, then hit that like button. Subscribe for more insights that challenge conventional wisdom and reveal the hidden mechanics of power and success. Share this with someone who needs to transform their weakness into strength. And watch the next video where we dive even deeper into the dark psychology of human nature and how to master it for your advantage.